Hi. I pressed the gun to my cheating wife's lover's head, watching his eyes widen in sheer terror. He was shaking, practically falling over himself, whimpering like a cornered animal. Please, don't hurt me. I'm ready to make it right. I have money, I'll give it all. He scrambled to the desk, throwing open a drawer, hands fumbling to pull out stacks of cash like that was going to fix everything. I took a breath, keeping my grip steady, feeling the weight of every lie, every hidden text, every excuse she'd thrown my way like it was yesterday. This man was the reason my marriage was a sick, twisted joke, and now he had the nerve to beg for mercy. I looked him dead in the eye and, with a voice as cold as steel, said, "You should have thought twice before jumping into bed with a married woman." Watching him break down in front of me, I could almost feel a sick satisfaction, but deep down, a part of me knew the real betrayal lay elsewhere, at home, with the woman I thought I knew. I lowered the gun just enough to let him breathe, but I wasn't done. He'd leave town tonight, or I'd finish what I started. No more pretending. That night had turned my life upside down, shattering my reality piece by piece. And it all started a month ago, with a single late night and a feeling I couldn't shake. As I walked out of that scumbag's apartment, I felt a strange sense of calm. The kind of calm that comes when there's nothing left to lose. The rush of adrenaline was fading, and all that remained was a hollow pit where my marriage, my trust, and my life used to be. I slid the gun back into my coat pocket, trying to wrap my mind around what had just happened. But just as I stepped into the hallway, a sound stopped me cold, a soft gasp. I turned, and there, peeking from behind the door of the next apartment, was a woman, wide-eyed and frozen. She must have seen everything. Maybe she thought I'd hurt her next because she stammered, I didn't see anything. Her face was pale, almost ghostly. I didn't have the time or patience for witnesses, but I didn't want to end up with cops on my tail either. I took a step toward her, and she backed up, looking ready to bolt. "Look," I said, keeping my voice low, "this isn't your business. Forget you saw me here, and I'll forget I saw you." I didn't break eye contact, and after a tense second, she gave a quick, terrified nod before slipping back inside her apartment, shutting the door so fast I heard it click. As I made my way out of the complex, I took in the irony of it all. Here I was, forcing a stranger into silence while the person I should have trusted most in this world was lying to me with every breath. The calm I'd felt leaving the guy's apartment twisted into a quiet, burning rage. Now it was time to go home and see if Madison had the guts to look me in the eye after everything I'd discovered. And tonight, I wasn't letting her dodge a single question. When I got back, the house was dark, but I knew she was inside. Her car was parked out front, looking like it hadn't moved since her so-called late-night meeting. I took a deep breath, steadying myself before turning the key. Every second stretched out, each one an agonizing reminder of what I was about to face. The moment I opened the door, she came out of the living room, her face tense. "You're home late," she said, as if we were a normal couple, like I hadn't just found her lover and held him at gunpoint. She wrapped her arms around herself, as if she were the one feeling vulnerable. That one gesture made my blood boil. "Yeah, well, some of us had a busy night," I replied, my voice dripping with a sarcasm she couldn't miss. She squinted at me, looking for a clue, any hint of what I knew. She opened her mouth to respond, but I didn't give her a chance. "You want to tell me what's going on, Madison?" I asked, staring her down. She froze, her hand halfway to her mouth, her face shifting from surprise to something darker. I wasn't going to let her talk her way out of this one. "Don't even bother lying," I added, watching her eyes widen. I know everything." Her mouth snapped shut, and for a split second, I thought she might actually admit it. But instead, her expression hardened. "Oh, really?" she said, crossing her arms. "What exactly do you think you know?" Her voice dripped with contempt, and I could tell she was ready to twist this back on me, make me out to be paranoid, irrational. She'd used that tactic before in small arguments, flipping the blame until I was the one apologizing. Not tonight. I know about Darren. I know about the nights you worked late. I know about the texts and the calls, and don't you dare act like I'm making this up. I stepped closer, and she didn't move, just kept glaring at me with a look that felt more like defiance than guilt. Go ahead. Deny it, Madison. Tell me I'm wrong. Her face cracked, but it wasn't shame or regret, it was anger. She laughed, sharp and bitter. So, what, you followed me? Stalked me? Dug through my phone like some insecure maniac? Her voice was razor-sharp, and in that moment, I realized she wasn't sorry. Not for what she'd done, and definitely not for hurting me. No, she was mad that I'd figured it out, mad that her game was over. You're unbelievable, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I'd come home thinking I'd get some tearful apology, some pathetic explanation, but all she was giving me was attitude and blame. It was like she didn't even care. Yeah, she shot back, stepping closer, her eyes daring me to do something about it. Well, maybe if you hadn't been so damn boring, I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere. Her words hit like a slap, but I wasn't about to let her see me flinch. So it's my fault now? I asked, clenching my fists. It's my fault you're a liar and a cheat? Oh, grow up, she snapped, rolling her eyes. People get bored, John. People want excitement. You think you're the only one in this marriage? Maybe if you paid more attention to me instead of burying yourself in work, we wouldn't be here right now. Her words twisted inside me, a dark anger building until I couldn't keep it in. You want excitement? I said, my voice calm but deadly. Fine. But remember this, Madison, there are consequences for what you've done. I might have let Darren off easy, but don't think for a second you'll get the same. She laughed again, that bitter, hateful laugh. Consequences? What are you going to do, John? Cry some more? Shout a little louder? I stepped back, suddenly seeing her for what she was, a stranger. A stranger who had the nerve to tear my life apart and laugh about it. But as furious as I was, I knew there was no point in saying anything else. She wasn't going to admit her mistakes, and she definitely wasn't going to apologize. Without another word, I turned and walked away, feeling her cold stare on my back. There was no going back from this. Not now, not ever. And the next decision I made would change everything, for both of us. As I left the house, I didn't look back. My head was spinning, my heart pounding, but I couldn't stand another second in the same space as her. The late-night air hit me like a slap, cutting through my rage, and suddenly I found myself driving aimlessly, mind racing in 1,000 directions at once. Every corner I turned, every red light I stopped at, brought flashes of our life together, moments that now felt tainted, hollow. And with every memory, the fury grew sharper. After a while, I pulled over, parked on the side of a quiet road, and sat there, just breathing. How did things get here? 1 minute, I was a husband, a partner, building a life with the woman I loved, and the next, I was in a stranger's apartment, pointing a gun at a man I'd never met. I closed my eyes, my hand instinctively tightening around the grip of the gun still in my pocket. Then my phone buzzed. A message. From her. Madison, don't you think we should talk about this? You walking out isn't solving anything. I stared at the screen, feeling the bile rise in my throat. Was she really trying to make this sound like some kind of misunderstanding? Like I was in the wrong for leaving? My fingers shook as I typed a response. Me, talk? You mean more excuses, more lies? There's nothing left to talk about. I hit send, shoving the phone into my pocket, but not even a second later, it buzzed again. Another message. This one was different. Unknown, I know what you're going through, John. I've been there. If you want to know more about your wife's secrets, meet me at the corner of 5th and Harrison. Midnight. My mind reeled. I didn't recognize the number, and the idea of someone knowing what I was going through felt surreal. A prank? A sick joke? But something about the message tugged at me, something that felt like a dangerous curiosity. What secrets did Madison have that I hadn't uncovered yet? Midnight wasn't far off, and before I could talk myself out of it, I was driving again, heading for the address. When I arrived at the corner of 5th and Harrison, the street was deserted. A lone street lamp flickered, casting eerie shadows, and I wondered if I'd fallen for some elaborate trick. But just as I was about to leave, a figure emerged from the shadows, a woman, around my age, with short, dark hair and a knowing, almost sympathetic look in her eyes. "You're John, right?" she asked, stepping closer. Her voice was calm, almost familiar. "Who are you?" I asked, feeling my guard go up. "Let's just say I'm someone who knows what it's like to be betrayed by Madison," she said, crossing her arms. "I know it sounds crazy, but I used to be in your shoes. Madison and we had a friendship years ago. That is, until I found out about her affair with my husband." Her words struck like a punch to the gut. Madison had been in an affair years before? With a married man? She hadn't just cheated on me, she'd done this before. The woman looked away, as if reliving her own pain. "I wanted you to know, because, when it happened to me, no one told me the truth. I spent years thinking I was going crazy, trying to make sense of why things fell apart. I figured you deserved at least that much." For a moment, I was speechless, the weight of her words sinking in. All these years, I'd been with someone who'd done this to others, who had no regard for the destruction she caused. My hands trembled. Madison wasn't just a liar, she was a serial cheater, leaving broken lives in her wake like it meant nothing. The woman turned back to me, her face unreadable. "But there's something else. Madison doesn't just cheat. She has a pattern. And if you aren't careful, she'll make you the villain in this story." "What do you mean?" I asked, feeling a sense of dread creep over me. "She'll twist the truth, make it look like you're unstable, dangerous even. I know because she did it to me. My husband, he didn't believe a word I said. Madison convinced him I was unhinged, obsessed. And before I knew it, I was out of my own home. She's good at it, John. Manipulating, shifting blame, it's her specialty." Her warning hung in the air, chilling me to the core. Could Madison really do that? But as I thought back to her defiant, mocking face when I confronted her, it wasn't hard to believe. She'd already tried twisting the narrative, making me the bad guy for spying on her. And if she was capable of that, then who knew what she'd say or do next? I nodded, trying to hold on to my composure. "Thanks for telling me," I said, barely able to find the words. The woman gave me a sad smile, her eyes heavy with a pain I recognized. "Be careful, John. She'll stop at nothing to protect herself. You need to make sure you're the one in control here." She reached into her bag and handed me a small USB drive. "There's proof. Messages, photos. Things I gathered over the years. They might help you." I took the drive, feeling its weight in my hand. It felt like a weapon, like the missing piece I needed to fight back. "Thank you," I said, meaning it. She nodded, taking a step back into the shadows. "Good luck," she said, and with that, she was gone, leaving me alone under the flickering streetlight. Back in my car, I turned the USB drive over in my hands, wondering what secrets it held. My mind was a whirlwind of anger, betrayal, and a new, unsettling determination. Madison wasn't just cheating on me, she was a master manipulator, and if what this woman said was true, I was up against something darker than I'd ever imagined. That night, I sat in the car and plugged the USB into my laptop, ready to finally see the extent of the lies I'd been living under. And as the files opened, revealing photo after photo, message after message, the reality hit harder than I'd prepared for. This was more than an affair. Madison had a history, a habit of wrecking lives, of making everyone around her believe she was innocent while she tore people apart. And now, it was my turn to fight back. I wasn't going to let her do this to me. As I drove home, the pieces of a plan started to fall into place. Madison had pushed me into a corner, but this time, I was coming out swinging. She'd built her world on lies, and I was about to tear it down brick by brick. I barely slept that night, sitting at the kitchen table with the USB drive and a growing list of realizations. Madison hadn't just made a mistake, she'd built a life around betrayal, weaving lies as effortlessly as she wove words. But now, I had something she didn't expect, proof. And I had a plan to make her see that her days of manipulation were over. The next morning, I made her breakfast. Nothing elaborate, just eggs, toast, and coffee, but I played the role of the dutiful husband, and she looked surprised, almost wary, as she sat down across from me. "Morning," I said, setting the plate in front of her with a calm I barely recognized in myself. She looked at me, suspicion flickering in her eyes. "You seem different," she said, her tone probing, as if she sensed something was off but couldn't put her finger on it. I just smiled. "Maybe I've finally accepted things as they are," I said, watching her carefully. "I realized last night that maybe I've been holding on to a fantasy for too long. Trying to be the perfect husband, the understanding partner." I leaned back, crossing my arms as I watched her, knowing exactly where this was going. She smirked, sipping her coffee, clearly convinced she'd won. "Well, I'm glad you're finally seeing things clearly, John. Life's too short to live by some ideal." "Exactly," I replied, nodding. "That's why I think it's time we had a little change. A fresh start." She gave me a curious look, and I could tell she thought she'd won this war of wits. "In fact, I think you'll find this interesting," I added, reaching into my pocket to pull out the USB drive. I set it on the table in front of her. She looked at it, frowning. "What's this?" "Oh, just a little something I found. Consider it a gift." I leaned in, my voice low. "It's amazing, really, all the things we hide, thinking no one will ever discover them. But secrets have a way of surfacing, don't they?" Her face paled as she picked up the drive, turning it in her fingers. "What are you talking about? Why don't you take a look?" I replied, nodding toward the laptop on the counter. "Let's go through it together." She hesitated, her fingers tightening around the drive. "John, I don't know what you think you found, but—" "No more excuses," I cut in, my voice sharper than I intended. "I'm done with them, Madison. It's time you face the truth." She looked like she wanted to throw the drive across the room, but instead, she took a slow, measured breath and crossed over to the laptop. With a few clicks, she pulled up the files, her face shifting from anger to shock as image after image, message after message filled the screen. I watched her crumble, saw her attempt to pull together excuses, but it was too late. The evidence was irrefutable. "Where did you get this?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Oh, let's just say I ran into an old friend of yours," I replied, enjoying the way her eyes widened. "Funny how things have a way of catching up to you, isn't it?" She turned to me, her expression a mix of horror and defiance. "So, what now? You think you're going to get some kind of revenge? Hurt me like I hurt you?" I shrugged, my voice casual. "Not exactly. Hurting you would be too easy, Madison. You've lived your life manipulating people, convincing everyone you're something you're not. But you know what I realized last night? You're nothing without that image, without people believing you're some flawless, innocent woman. I'm going to take that from you." She laughed, but it was shaky, uncertain. "And how exactly do you plan to do that, John. I smiled, pulling out my phone. I already did. I hit play, and her own voice echoed from the phone, a recording of our confrontation the night before, of her admitting everything, mocking me, blaming me for her affair. Every word was clear, undeniable. Her face drained of color as the recording played. You recorded me? Her voice was a whisper. Every word, I replied, tucking my phone back in my pocket. I sent it to a few friends, just in case anything should happen to the original. You wouldn't, she spat, anger flashing in her eyes. You'd ruin us both. Maybe. But here's the thing, you're the one with everything to lose, Madison. Your reputation, your friends, your career, everything you've built on lies. I'm ready to walk away from all of it. Are you? Her expression shifted, a mask of panic mixed with fury. What do you want, John? She asked, each word laced with contempt. I leaned forward, my tone deadly calm. You're going to leave, Madison. Walk away from this house, from me, from our friends. You're going to tell everyone you're moving for work, or that you need some time alone, I don't care. But you're leaving, and you're doing it today. She gaped at me, searching for some hint of mercy, but I held her gaze, unflinching. And if I refuse, she said, her voice barely audible. Then the whole world sees you for who you really are, I replied, feeling a strange satisfaction in the certainty of my words. I'll make sure everyone knows. And let's be clear, if you try to twist this, try to blame me or claim I'm the unstable one, that recording goes public. You won't have a life left to manipulate. For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. She was cornered, and she knew it. She couldn't twist her way out, couldn't charm her way back. This time, the consequences were real. She glanced around the room, her shoulders sagging in defeat. Fine, she finally said, her voice barely a whisper. You win, John. I leaned back, feeling the weight lift off my shoulders. It's not about winning, Madison. It's about ending this game. And now, it's over. She stormed off to pack her things, and within an hour, she was gone. I watched as her car disappeared down the road, the house finally silent, free of her lies. The chaos, the heartbreak, the betrayal, it was all behind me now. And in its place was an unexpected calm, a feeling of freedom I hadn't felt in years. I sat down at the kitchen table, alone, realizing that everything I thought I'd needed, everything I'd fought so hard to keep, was nothing but a lie. And as the morning sun streamed through the windows, I felt a strange sense of peace, a chance to rebuild, not on lies, but on something real. I poured myself a cup of coffee, staring out the window, knowing I'd survived the worst of it. Madison was out of my life, her power over me shattered. And as I took my first sip, I knew that whatever came next, I was ready to face it. A week had passed since Madison left, and the silence in the house felt almost eerie, like a calm after a storm that you can't fully trust. I was still piecing my life back together, sifting through old memories, throwing out reminders of a life that had been based on deception. But the strangest part of it all? I wasn't angry anymore. Just empty. One evening, I sat on the couch, absently scrolling through my phone when an email notification flashed across the screen. The subject line was short and strange, "Do you really think it's over?" There was no sender name, just an email address I didn't recognize. I opened it, and a chill ran down my spine. You may have kicked Madison out, but don't think for a second that she's going to let you off that easy. She's got more secrets than you know, John. Secrets that could ruin you, too. She's coming back, and this time, she's going to take everything. A friend. I stared at the screen, my pulse quickening. Who was this friend? And what did they mean by Madison coming back? She'd left, tail between her legs, she wouldn't dare show her face here again. Or would she? I tried to shrug it off, but as the days went by, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Everywhere I went, I felt like I was being watched, like Madison's ghost was lurking around every corner, ready to pounce. I started noticing small things out of place in the house, a door that I was certain I'd locked, slightly ajar. A faint smell of her perfume lingering in the hallway, so strong it made me question if she'd somehow snuck back in while I was out. It was ridiculous, impossible, and yet. Then, one night, it happened. I was in bed, trying to sleep, when I heard a soft creak downstairs. I sat up, listening. There it was again, the unmistakable sound of footsteps. My heart pounded as I slipped out of bed, grabbing the bat I'd started keeping beside me since that eerie email. I crept down the stairs, each step slow and silent. In the darkness, shadows stretched across the walls, twisting in eerie patterns. My mind raced with possibilities, every dark corner hiding a threat. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, I saw her. Madison, standing in the living room, her back to me, staring at the family photos on the wall. She looked almost ghostly, her hair disheveled, her clothes a mess, like she hadn't slept in days. She turned around slowly, her eyes cold, empty of any remorse or emotion. "Surprised to see me?" she said, a twisted smile spreading across her face. "What the hell are you doing here?" I demanded, gripping the bat tightly. She laughed, that same mocking laugh that used to cut through every argument we'd ever had. "Oh, John, did you really think I'd just leave? Walk away and let you ruin my life? Not a chance." She took a step toward me, her eyes gleaming with something dark, almost deranged. "You're trespassing," I said, keeping my voice steady even though my insides were churning. "Leave, Madison, or I'll call the police." She just shrugged, unfazed. "Go ahead. But I don't think they'll believe a word you say. You think you're the only one who kept evidence?" She held up her phone, showing me a screen full of messages. Messages I supposedly sent, confessing to things I'd never done. Photos of me in situations that, to any outsider, would look questionable. Every image, every message, carefully crafted to make me look like the bad guy. What is this?" I stammered, my mind reeling. "Proof, John," she said, smiling wider. "Proof that you're not who everyone thinks you are. It's amazing what a little editing can do. You ruined my life, so I'm going to ruin yours, one lie at a time." The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. She'd planned this. The recordings, the photos, everything had been a setup, a way to twist the story if she ever needed it. And now, she was using it against me, turning the knife that she'd planted all along. But instead of feeling panic, a strange clarity settled over me. She might have her lies, her tricks, but I wasn't the same man who'd let her walk all over me. I'd come too far, endured too much to let her take me down now. "Go ahead, Madison," I said, my voice low, controlled. "Take your shots. Show your little proof to whoever you want. But we both know the truth, don't we? That you're a lying, manipulative monster who can't stand being outsmarted." She sneered, clearly thrown off by my calm. "You think anyone's going to believe you? I have everything I need to bury you, John. Your job, your reputation, even your friends, they'll all turn their backs once they see what I have." "Maybe," I replied, my voice cold. "But then again, maybe they'll see through you the way I finally did." For the first time, she looked uncertain, like the reality of my resistance was sinking in. She was used to controlling everyone around her, used to people bending to her will. But not this time. Not anymore. She took a step back, a flicker of doubt in her eyes. "You're bluffing," she hissed, her voice wavering. "Am I?" I said, taking a step closer. "You can't break what's already broken, Madison. You've already taken everything I cared about. All that's left now is for me to make sure you never hurt anyone else." I saw a flash of fear in her eyes before she masked it with a smirk. "You think you're so clever," she spat. "But I'll be back, John. You can't keep me out forever." I nodded, the finality of it settling in. "Then I'll be waiting." With one last glare, she turned and left, slamming the door behind her. I locked it, double-checked every window, and sank into the couch, feeling a weight lift off me. I wasn't scared anymore. She'd lost her power over me. And no matter what lies she spread, I knew the truth. As I sat in the quiet of the empty house, I realized that this battle was finally over, not because she was gone, but because I'd taken back control. She could try all the tricks she wanted, but I wasn't the same man who'd fallen for her lies. I'd won, not by beating her at her own game, but by refusing to play it altogether. In the days after Madison's visit, I thought about every word she'd said, every threat she'd tried to wield like a weapon. But the shock of her twisted plan had worn off, replaced by something stronger, a resolve that, if she was going to try to ruin me, I'd be ready. Then, just as I was starting to settle into this strange, new life, I got a call that flipped everything on its head. It was from a man named Evan, someone I'd never met but whose name Madison had mentioned once or twice in passing, always in casual, unremarkable ways. He introduced himself briefly, his voice tense, strained, and he didn't waste time with pleasantries. "John," he said, barely pausing for breath. "We need to talk about Madison. There's something you need to know, and you're not going to like it." I nearly laughed. "You mean, aside from the fact that she's a pathological liar?" He didn't join in. "No. This is bigger than you think." I didn't want to reach out, but she's crossed a line. "What line?" I asked, a familiar dread creeping in. He took a shaky breath. "I was her. I guess you could call it her partner in crime," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We worked together to manipulate people. To blackmail them, to extort them. She used our relationship as a cover to ruin people's lives. But when she turned on me, I realized I was just another pawn in her game. I left it alone for years, but she's gotten more ruthless. And she's planning to drag you down like she's done to everyone else." I froze, trying to process what he was saying. I had no idea that Madison's games went so deep, that there was a whole underground network to her twisted ways. But Evan wasn't done. "She's been watching you, John," he continued. "Since the day she left, she's been tracking everything you do, preparing for this moment. You might think she's gone, but she's not. She's waiting, looking for the right time to strike." The words hit like a sledgehammer. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, skepticism creeping into my voice. "Because I want out, John," he replied, sounding defeated. "I'm tired of running, tired of being her puppet. But I also want her to pay for what she's done. She's a threat to everyone she meets, and I can't watch her destroy another life. Not again." I took a breath, struggling to keep my composure. This was a trap, had to be, but there was a sincerity in his voice I couldn't ignore. "And what do you want from me?" "Meet me," he said. "Tonight. I'll show you everything, emails, photos, videos. Proof of what she's done, of how she set people up, ruined them. But I need your word that you're serious about stopping her. Because once she knows we've talked, there's no going back." Against my better judgment, I agreed, feeling the pull of something I couldn't ignore. I couldn't turn my back on this. If what he said was true, then Madison was far worse than I'd imagined, and leaving it alone was no longer an option. Later that night, I drove to the address Evan had given me. It was a grimy, abandoned warehouse on the edge of town, the kind of place where nothing good ever happened. I parked and waited, feeling the weight of the decision I'd made settle heavily in my chest. There was still a part of me that didn't fully trust Evan. But I had to know the truth, no matter the cost. Evan arrived soon after, looking over his shoulder like he was being followed. He was a tall, thin man, with a nervous energy that put me on edge. He approached the car, and I motioned for him to get in. As soon as he was inside, he handed me a stack of papers and a flash drive. "Everything's in there," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Emails between her and me, and with other targets. Photos of her, messages she saved to use as blackmail. And, John, there's one more thing." I glanced at him, feeling a chill down my spine. "What?" "She's framing you, John. She's already started spreading lies, telling people you've been violent, unstable. She's got a whole story lined up. If you don't stop her now, she'll make sure you lose everything." My stomach dropped. She wasn't just ruining my reputation, she was building a case against me, painting me as the villain in a story she'd written herself. And if Evan was telling the truth, then this was just the beginning. I plugged the flash drive into my laptop and began scrolling through the files, one after another. Each document, each message, painted a picture of a woman who was disturbingly calculated, a woman who could twist anyone's life to suit her needs. There were transcripts of her conversations with other victims, emails where she outlined her plans to get money, sympathy, power, all by manipulating people who trusted her. I felt sick. This wasn't just betrayal, this was a level of evil I hadn't thought possible. "So, what's your plan?" I asked Evan, my voice hoarse. He took a deep breath. "I want to go public with it all. Expose her for what she is. But I can't do it alone. I need you to back me up, to confirm everything. Together, we can make sure she never does this to anyone again." I nodded, feeling a surge of determination. Madison had ruined lives and moved on without a scratch for too long. But this time, she wouldn't get away. Before we parted ways, Evan gave me a burner phone, promising to stay in touch, and I agreed to meet him in a few days to finalize our plan. I watched him walk away, feeling a glimmer of hope that maybe, finally, we'd put an end to Madison's reign of terror. But just as I was about to leave, my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. I picked it up, and there was a pause on the other end before a familiar, chilling voice spoke. "So, you met Evan, didn't you?" Madison's voice was calm, almost amused. "Did he tell you his little story? Did he make you feel like the hero?" My heart sank. She'd been watching us. She knew everything. "Your game is over, Madison," I replied, my voice steady. "People are going to know what you've done." She laughed, cold and mocking. "Oh, John. You're so naive. I've spent my whole life outsmarting people like you and Evan. And trust me, you don't want to go to war with me. Walk away now, and I might consider sparing you." I gripped the phone, her words echoing in my head, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Do your worst, Madison. I'm not afraid of you anymore." The line went silent for a second before she spoke, her tone deadly. "Oh, you will be, John. You will be." The call ended, and I sat there in the silence, the weight of her threat hanging in the air. She was planning something bigger than I'd realized. And now, it was a race to see who could strike first. But this time, I wasn't alone. And this time, I was ready. In the days that followed, I prepared for the inevitable showdown with Madison. I'd underestimated her ruthlessness, and I wasn't about to make that mistake again. I knew she would go to any length to protect her secrets, to save herself from the fallout. But now, I had allies. Evan was in regular contact, and he'd pulled in a third player, a private investigator named Sarah, someone he trusted, someone who had already seen Madison's destruction up close. Sarah didn't waste any time. We met at a dimly lit diner late one evening, the air thick with smoke and the smell of coffee that had probably been brewing for days. She slid a thick folder across the table toward me, her face unreadable. "I've been on Madison's trail for a while," she said, her voice quiet but steady. What you're dealing with goes deeper than you think, John. This woman doesn't just ruin lives, she erases them. I opened the folder and was greeted with a collection of photos and documents, each one detailing people Madison had taken down, a business partner she'd framed for embezzlement, a friend she'd blackmailed into near bankruptcy, and another former lover who'd vanished under suspicious circumstances. Is this even real? I muttered, my voice barely audible. I knew Madison was manipulative, but this? This was a level of cruelty I hadn't imagined. Oh, it's real, Sarah replied, her tone grim. Madison knows how to hide, how to cover her tracks. And she's had a lot of practice. She leaned forward, eyes sharp. If we're going to bring her down, we'll need to be smarter than she is. Evan nodded, his expression tense. We can't just expose her. She's too slippery. She'll twist every word, spin every piece of evidence. We need a confession, something undeniable. I shook my head, feeling the weight of the task ahead. How do we get that? She's careful, Evan. She'll never admit anything unless she thinks she's in control. Sarah smiled, a spark of confidence in her eyes. Exactly. Which is why we're going to let her think she is. Her plan was deceptively simple, almost brilliant. We would lure Madison into thinking I was on the verge of collapse, broken, and ready to bargain. She knew how to play people's weaknesses, and if we gave her a reason to believe I was vulnerable, she would come running. We'd get her to a neutral location, one she'd think was safe, and capture every word on tape. The stage was set, and the following night, I sent Madison a message from a new number, the desperation in the text unmistakable. I'm done fighting, Madison. You win. Just tell me what you want. I waited, tension buzzing through every nerve. I knew she'd bite, and sure enough, within minutes, her response came through. Tomorrow. 7 p.m. The old warehouse by the docks. Come alone. I felt a twisted satisfaction reading her message. The warehouse was perfect, isolated, with cameras Sarah had planted earlier. Madison was playing right into our hands. The next evening, I arrived early, setting up in the shadows with Evan and Sarah in a control room nearby, ready to capture every word. The cold, damp air seeped through my jacket as I waited, heart pounding with a mix of dread and anticipation. I didn't know what Madison would say, but this was our last shot to expose her for who she really was. At exactly 7 p.m., her footsteps echoed through the empty space, sharp and deliberate. She walked toward me with that same smug, unbreakable confidence, a predator who thought she'd already won. She was dressed in black, her expression icy and calculating. You finally see things my way, don't you, John? She said, folding her arms, her eyes glinting with satisfaction. All you had to do was stop fighting. Would have saved us both a lot of trouble. I swallowed, playing the part. I don't want any more trouble, Madison. I just want peace. I can't keep up with this fight. She laughed, a cold, mocking sound. Oh, John. I broke you faster than I thought. I didn't even need to try. She tilted her head, studying me. You were always so predictable. That's why I never bothered taking you seriously. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stay calm. Why did you do it, Madison? Why tear people down like this? What do you get out of it? She gave me a pitying look. What I get out of it? Power, John. Control. You were so easy to manipulate, just like all the others. And if you hadn't pried, if you'd just played your role, none of this would have happened. Her arrogance was infuriating, but I kept my voice steady. So, what now? You think you can just walk away? She smirked, tapping her finger against her chin. Actually, yes. I think I can. Because the only evidence you have is what I've allowed you to find. And when this is all over, I'll make sure everyone believes you're the one who lost it, who couldn't handle the end of a marriage." She took a step closer, her voice a venomous whisper. "You'll be nothing. And I'll move on, just like I always do." That's when Sarah's voice crackled over my earpiece. "Now, John. Push her." I steadied myself, taking a step closer to Madison. "You think you're untouchable, don't you? That no one will ever believe what you've done?" She laughed, rolling her eyes. "Please, John. I've perfected this. I know how to make people disappear, how to ruin their lives without a trace." Her voice dropped to a low hiss. "Just like I did with Evan, just like I did with everyone else who crossed me." I took a deep breath, barely able to contain my rage. "And you think you'll get away with it? That people will just believe your lies forever?" Her smirk faded, her face twisting into something darker. "I know I will," she sneered. "Because I've been getting away with it for years. You're just another fool who fell for the same tricks. You thought you could beat me, but look at you now. Pathetic." That's when I nodded, signaling to Sarah. A soft click sounded from above, and a voice echoed through the warehouse, a recording of Madison's words, everything she'd just admitted. Her face paled as she realized what was happening, her eyes darting to the source of the sound. You recorded me?" She stammered, a mix of shock and fury contorting her face. "Every word," I replied, unable to suppress a small, victorious smile. "It's over, Madison." She backed away, her expression shifting from anger to desperation. "You won't get away with this, John. I'll destroy you. I'll—" "No, Madison," I interrupted, my voice steady. "For the first time, you're the one who's been played." As Sarah and Evan emerged from the shadows, Madison's fury melted into pure, unfiltered panic. She stumbled, her confidence shattered, realizing there was no way out. Every carefully constructed lie, every cruel manipulation, had unraveled in a matter of minutes. She'd lost control, and for the first time, she knew it. She lunged at me, desperation flashing in her eyes. "This isn't over," she screamed. "I'll make you pay. I'll make all of you pay." But her words fell on deaf ears. We watched as she crumbled, her web of lies collapsing around her. And as we walked out of the warehouse, leaving her to face the consequences of her own actions, a weight lifted from my shoulders, the weight of years of lies finally gone. It was over. She was over. And as I walked into the dawn of a new day, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Freedom. In the weeks that followed Madison's meltdown at the warehouse, it was as if the whole twisted mess was finally unraveling around her, piece by piece. The recordings we'd captured, along with all the evidence from Evan and Sarah, were more than enough to expose Madison's lies and manipulations. Slowly, the people she'd wronged began to see her for who she really was, a fraud, a master manipulator who preyed on trust and left ruin in her wake. But Madison didn't go quietly. Her threats turned into desperate attempts to salvage her reputation. She called everyone she could, spinning tales of my supposed obsession, her voice laced with panic, her stories growing more bizarre with each call. She tried playing the victim, but with the truth spreading fast, it was too late. People stopped picking up, friends and allies went silent, and soon enough, Madison found herself without the support she'd always taken for granted. Evan and I watched it unfold from the sidelines, both of us knowing the damage she'd caused was finally catching up to her. We met once more at that same diner, each of us bearing a strange sense of peace that came with seeing justice done. He thanked me, his voice steadier than I'd ever heard it, and we both agreed it was time to move on. But just when I thought it was all over, I received one last message from Madison. A handwritten note left at my doorstep, scrawled hastily and smeared, as though written in a fit of anger. "You may think you've won, but remember this, I don't go down without a fight. You've taken everything from me, and you will regret this. I'm not done, John. Not by a long shot. There it was, the final, desperate words of a woman who refused to face the truth, even as it stared her down. But this time, the threat didn't shake me. I knew she was out of moves, out of allies, and too far gone to piece together another scheme. Her words were empty, her power finally broken. And I decided, right then and there, that her last attempt at revenge would be met with nothing but silence. Months passed, and as time went on, Madison's name began to fade. People stopped whispering about her, the scandal dulled, and her influence disappeared. She was just another face, another person who had tried and failed to manipulate those around her. One quiet evening, as I sat on my back porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, I felt a strange kind of gratitude, a bittersweet appreciation for the journey I'd been forced to take. Madison had tried to tear my life apart, but in the process, she'd shown me something invaluable. She'd forced me to find strength I never knew I had, to reclaim control over my life, and to value the truth above all else. I wasn't the same man she'd once manipulated so easily. I was stronger, wiser, and no longer haunted by her shadow. As the final light faded, I realized I didn't hate her. I didn't fear her. She was a chapter of my past, one that had been closed for good. And as I took a deep breath, the quiet settling over me like a warm blanket, I knew I was finally free. Bye for now. I'll never forget the moment my world cracked wide open. It was a Tuesday, unremarkable in every other way. I'd just returned home from the base, my duffel bag slung over my shoulder and the faint smell of jet fuel still clinging to my fatigues. I was exhausted, body aching, but I was glad to be home. For weeks, thoughts of my wife, Laura, had been my only anchor. The idea of her warm smile waiting for me at the door kept me sane through deployments and sleepless nights. But the house was quiet. Too quiet. I dropped my bag in the entryway and called out, "Laura?" No answer. Odd. Normally, she'd come running to greet me, arms flung around my neck, kissing me like I'd been gone for years instead of weeks. I checked the kitchen, the living room, even the backyard. Nothing. It wasn't until I went upstairs to our bedroom that I noticed something off, a faint noise, like hushed voices. I pushed the door open, and that's when it hit me. The image is seared into my mind like a scar I can never erase. Laura, sprawled across our bed, tangled in sheets that still smelled like my aftershave, with a man I instantly recognized. My brother-in-law. His smug face twisted in shock as he scrambled to cover himself. For a split second, I couldn't move. My brain felt like it had short-circuited, trying to reconcile the woman I loved with the betrayal unfolding in front of me. And Laura? She didn't even look ashamed. Her expression was a cocktail of irritation and defiance, like I was the one intruding. "Oh, great," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "You're home early." "Home early?" I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. The rage simmering inside me felt volcanic, ready to erupt. "Look, it's not what it looks like," she continued, rolling her eyes as if I'd walked in on her watching TV instead of this. Can we talk about this later?" "Later?" I barked, finally snapping out of my stupor. "You're screwing my brother-in-law in our bed, and you want me to wait until it's more convenient for you?" James, the spineless worm that he is, tried to chime in. "Bro, it's not." I cut him off with a glare so sharp it could have drawn blood. "Don't call me bro." He shut up, but the damage was done. I wasn't just furious, I was humiliated. This wasn't just about Laura breaking her vows, this was about the utter lack of respect. The mockery of my loyalty, my sacrifices, my love. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I asked Laura, my voice trembling. "You think I deserve this? After everything I've done for you?" She shrugged, shrugging off my pain like it was nothing more than an inconvenience. I don't know, Nate. Maybe if you weren't gone all the time, this wouldn't have happened. Ever think of that? Her words were a dagger to the chest. Not an apology. Not even a hint of remorse. Just cold, calculated deflection. You're blaming me? I said, incredulous. I'm out there busting my ass, serving my country, and you think it's my fault you can't keep your legs closed? Her face hardened, and for a moment, I saw the real Laura, the one she'd been hiding behind her sweet facade for years. You're not perfect, Nate, she spat. You're always so uptight. Controlling. Maybe I just needed someone who made me feel alive again. Alive. That word felt like acid in my mouth. I stared at her, searching for some trace of the woman I thought I knew, the woman I'd built my life around. But she wasn't there. Just this stranger wearing her face. James, the coward, started gathering his clothes, mumbling something about leaving. I didn't stop him. My fists clenched at my sides, itching to swing, but I knew better. The military had trained me to control my rage, to channel it. And I wasn't about to waste it on him, not yet. When he scurried out like the rat he was, I turned back to Laura. We're not done, I said, my voice low and deadly calm. She rolled her eyes again, like I was being unreasonable for wanting answers. What do you want me to say, Nate? That I'm sorry? Fine. I'm sorry. But it's not like this was some grand betrayal. It's just life. People get bored. Things happen. Get over it. Get over it. I stared at her, my mind racing. This wasn't boredom. This wasn't some random fling. This was calculated, deliberate cruelty. And it was clear she wasn't even sorry, she was annoyed that I'd caught her. As I left the room, my chest heaving with a mixture of rage and heartbreak, I realized something. This wasn't going to end with an apology and a few counseling sessions. This was war. And I wasn't going to lose. I stormed out of the bedroom, my thoughts a hurricane of rage, humiliation, and disbelief. The silence in the house felt suffocating, broken only by the faint creak of the floorboards as I paced the living room. I had no idea what to do next, but one thing was clear, this wasn't over. Laura didn't even bother following me. No apologies, no pleading, nothing. Just her smug indifference, as if she were daring me to react. The audacity. I sat down heavily on the couch, my hands shaking as I tried to process what had just happened. James, my brother-in-law, of all people. That spineless, freeloading clown. I thought back to every time I'd invited him over for family dinners, lent him money when he was broke, and even vouched for him when Laura complained he was too much of a leech. I should have seen it. The way he lingered too long when hugging Laura at Christmas. The way she laughed just a little too hard at his dumb jokes. The pieces were falling into place now, each revelation another punch to the gut. Suddenly, I couldn't sit still anymore. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through the contacts, my thumb hovering over the name, Jake. Jake was my buddy from the military, a no-nonsense guy who always had my back. If anyone could help me think straight, it was him. The phone rang twice before he picked up. Nate? You good, man? He asked, his voice immediately on edge. No, I said flatly. I'm not good. I just walked in on Laura and James. In my bed. There was a pause, then a sharp intake of breath. Are you serious? As a heart attack, I replied, my voice shaking. Jake let out a string of curses that could have made a sailor blush. What do you want to do? That was the question, wasn't it? What did I want to do? Part of me wanted to storm back upstairs, drag James out by his ears, and make him regret ever stepping foot in my house. Another part of me wanted to confront Laura again, to demand answers, to scream until my throat was raw. But deep down, I knew neither of those things would fix what was broken. I don't know, I admitted, leaning forward and rubbing my temples. But I'm not just going to sit here and take it. Jake was quiet for a moment. Then, with the kind of calm authority that only years of combat experience can give, he said, "All right. First things first, get your head straight. Don't do anything stupid. You don't want to end up in jail over these idiots." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Yeah, you're right. And second, Jake continued, you need to start thinking long-term. You've got leverage here, Nate. Evidence. Use it. That word, evidence, lit a fire in my brain. I stood up, my pulse quickening. You're right, I said, pacing again. I need proof. Solid proof. My mind raced as I tried to remember where I'd left the small security camera I'd bought months ago for the front porch. It was one of those motion-activated ones, easy to set up. I'd never gotten around to installing it, but now it felt like fate had handed me a weapon. I found it buried in a drawer in the hallway and set it up in the bedroom while Laura was in the shower. My hands shook as I adjusted the angle, making sure the bed was squarely in view. I didn't care how sneaky it felt, I needed something concrete. Something to protect myself if this turned into a legal nightmare. By the time Laura came downstairs, wrapped in a towel like nothing had happened, I was sitting in the kitchen nursing a glass of whiskey. "You're still sulking?" she asked, her tone dripping with condescension. "God, Nate. Grow up." I stared at her, my anger simmering just beneath the surface. "You really don't care, do you?" She smirked. "What do you want me to do? Cry? Beg for forgiveness? It's not like you're perfect, you know." "Perfect?" I echoed, my voice rising. "I've given you everything, Laura. I've sacrificed years of my life for us, for this marriage. And this is how you repay me?" She rolled her eyes and poured herself a glass of wine, as if we were having a casual chat about the weather. "You're so dramatic. People cheat, Nate. It's not the end of the world." Her apathy was like gasoline on a fire. I slammed my glass down on the table, making her jump. "Not the end of the world? You just destroyed everything we built together, and you don't even care." "Maybe because it wasn't that great to begin with," she snapped, her voice venomous. That was it. The final nail in the coffin. I realized then that there was no saving this. No fixing it. Laura had made her choice, and now I had to make mine. "I want you out of this house," I said, my voice icy. She laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. "Out of my house? Oh, Nate, you really don't get it, do you? I'm not going anywhere. If you don't like it, maybe you should leave." My jaw tightened as her words sank in. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was a war for control. And if Laura thought she could walk all over me, she was about to learn just how wrong she was. I grabbed my phone and dialed Jake again. "Change of plans," I said when he picked up. "I'm going to need some help." The next morning, I woke up with a new sense of clarity. Rage still simmered beneath the surface, but now it was cold, calculated. Laura wanted a war, and I was ready to deliver. She had underestimated me, thought I'd crumble, pack my bags, and leave her to keep the house, the narrative, and the upper hand. Not a chance. She was still asleep when I slipped out of the house. I needed to clear my head, and more importantly, I needed reinforcements. Jake was waiting for me at the diner down the road, sitting in our usual booth with 2 steaming cups of coffee. "Rough night?" he asked as I slid into the seat across from him. "You have no idea," I muttered, grabbing the coffee like it was a lifeline. "All right," Jake said, leaning forward, his tone serious. "Tell me what's on your mind." I laid it all out for him, the betrayal, the lack of remorse, her smug attitude. By the time I finished, Jake was shaking his head, his jaw clenched. "She's playing you, man," he said. "Trying to break you down so she can take everything. You've got to flip the script." "That's the plan," I said, taking a sip of coffee. "But I need your help." Jake raised an eyebrow. "What kind of help are we talking about?" "Proof," I said simply. "I set up a camera in the bedroom. If she brings him back, I'll have all the evidence I need. But I need more than that. Financial records, phone logs, anything that shows just how deep this goes." Jake nodded slowly. "You're thinking divorce." "I'm thinking survival," I corrected. "If she wants a fight, I'm going to make sure I win." Jake smirked, a glint of approval in his eyes. "Now you're talking. All right, I'll help. First thing we need to do is find out where she's been spending her time, and with who." We spent the next 2 hours hashing out a plan. Jake had connections, people who could discreetly dig into Laura's activities. By the time we left the diner, I felt more prepared than I had in days. When I got back home, Laura was in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone with a glass of wine in hand. She looked up as I walked in, her expression as icy as ever. "Where've you been?" she asked, her tone more accusatory than curious. "Out," I said curtly, brushing past her. "Out doing what?" I paused, turning to face her. "Do you really care, Laura? Or are you just looking for something else to use against me?" She scoffed, shaking her head. "God, you're exhausting. Always so dramatic." "Funny," I said, forcing a bitter smile. "I was just about to say the same thing about you." I didn't wait for her response. Instead, I went upstairs and started combing through our financial records. It didn't take long to find the first red flag, a series of charges to a fancy hotel downtown. Charges that coincided perfectly with the dates of my last deployment. I stared at the screen, my hands gripping the edge of the desk so hard my knuckles turned white. This wasn't just a fling. Laura and James had been carrying on behind my back for months, maybe even years. I printed out the records and tucked them into a folder, my resolve hardening with every passing second. She thought she was untouchable, but she was about to learn just how wrong she was. That evening, I decided to test her. I wanted to see just how deep her arrogance went. Over dinner, I casually mentioned that I'd run into one of her friends, Sarah, earlier that day. Laura froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. "Oh," she said, her tone carefully neutral. "What did she say?" "Not much," I said, watching her closely. "Just that she's been meaning to call you. Said she hadn't seen you in a while." Laura's eyes narrowed ever so slightly, but she quickly masked it with a forced smile. "Yeah, we've both been busy. You know how it is." I nodded, pretending to accept her answer, but inside, I was seething. She was lying through her teeth, and I was done giving her the benefit of the doubt. That night, I checked the camera footage. Nothing yet, but I knew it was only a matter of time. Laura was too cocky to cover her tracks for long. Sure enough, 2 nights later, I hit the jackpot. I was lying in bed, pretending to be asleep, when I heard her tiptoe out of the room. I waited 10 minutes before checking the camera feed on my phone. There she was, sneaking James into the house like a thief in the night. My blood boiled as I watched them, laughing and whispering like teenagers. But I forced myself to stay calm. This was what I needed. Proof. Evidence. I recorded everything and saved it to multiple backups. Then I texted Jake. "She took the bait," I wrote. His reply came almost instantly, "Good. Now we move to phase 2. Phase 2 was going to hurt. Not for me, I was already numb, but for Laura. She thought she was untouchable, but she had no idea the storm that was about to hit her. As I lay back in bed, staring at the ceiling, a grim sense of satisfaction washed over me. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about taking back control of my life, and making sure Laura never hurt me, or anyone else, ever again. The morning after catching Laura sneaking James into the house, I woke up earlier than usual, my mind spinning with plans. The rage had settled into something sharper, determination. This wasn't just about Laura anymore. It was about setting things right, and it was about teaching her and James that actions have consequences. Laura was still asleep when I headed out. I didn't bother to leave her a note, I wasn't interested in her questioning where I was going. Jake and I had arranged to meet at his place, where he'd lined up something I hadn't been expecting, a friend of his who worked in private investigations. The guy, Eddie, was rough around the edges, with a gruff demeanor and a voice like gravel. He shook my hand firmly, looking me in the eye. "Jake tells me you've got a situation," he said, getting right to the point. "You could say that," I replied. Eddie smirked, pulling a notebook and pen from his jacket. "Let's talk about what you want." I told him everything, how I'd caught Laura and James, the financial records, the camera footage. Eddie listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally as he scribbled notes. "All right," he said finally. "You've already got a good start. Now, if we want to make sure she doesn't wriggle out of this, we're gonna need more patterns of behavior, additional witnesses, anything to prove this wasn't just a one-time thing." Jake chimed in. "Eddie's good, Nate. He'll get what you need." Eddie shrugged modestly. "I've handled worse. Give me a week." I nodded, shaking his hand again. "Do it. Whatever it costs." When I got home, Laura was in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone as usual. She barely looked up as I walked in. "Where've you been?" she asked, her voice flat. "Out," I said, matching her tone. "Out where?" I ignored her, heading straight for the fridge. I could feel her eyes on me, but I didn't care. If she thought I was going to let her walk all over me, she was in for a rude awakening. The rest of the day passed in tense silence. Laura tried to act like everything was normal, but there was a nervous edge to her movements. Maybe she was starting to sense that the game was slipping out of her control. That night, I got another text from Jake. "Eddie's already found something. You're gonna want to see this." The message was cryptic, but I trusted Jake. I told him to meet me the next morning. The bombshell. The next day, Jake pulled up outside my house, a grim expression on his face. He didn't bother with pleasantries as I climbed into the passenger seat. "Eddie's got something big," he said, handing me a folder. I opened it, my hands trembling slightly. Inside were photos, receipts, and a detailed timeline of Laura's activities. My stomach turned as I flipped through the evidence. She hadn't just been sneaking around with James. There were others. A man I didn't recognize appeared in multiple photos, laughing with Laura at a bar, walking hand in hand with her into a hotel. Another receipt showed a charge to a jewelry store, a necklace I'd never seen before. I felt sick. It wasn't just one betrayal. It was an avalanche, and I was buried under it. "This guy," Jake said, pointing to one of the photos. "Eddie says he's a lawyer. Looks like Laura's been covering her bases." "A lawyer?" I echoed, my voice hollow. Jake nodded grimly. "She's been preparing for this, Nate. She knew you'd catch on eventually." The realization hit me like a truck. Laura wasn't just unfaithful, she was calculated. She'd been lining up her escape plan while I was out risking my life for us. I clenched my fists, the folder crumpling in my hands. "She's not getting away with this." Jake nodded. "Damn right she's not. But you've got to be smart about this. Eddie's got more digging to do, but once we've got everything, we'll make our move." The unexpected visitor. When I got back home, I was still reeling from the new revelations. My hands itched to confront Laura, to throw the evidence in her face, but Jake's words echoed in my mind. Be smart. I wasn't ready for what happened next. As I walked into the living room, I froze. Sitting on the couch, her legs crossed and a sly smile on her face, was Laura. But she wasn't alone. James was there too. What the hell is this? I demanded, my voice sharp. Laura leaned back, sipping from a wine glass. Oh, relax, Nate. We just thought it was time to have an honest conversation. I glared at James, who wouldn't meet my eyes. Get out, I growled. Laura laughed, a cold, hollow sound. Oh, come on. You're not kicking him out. Not when we've got some things to clear up. What's there to clear up? I snapped. You've made your choices, Laura. And I'm making mine. Are you? She said, raising an eyebrow. Because from where I'm sitting, you're just running around like a headless chicken. Let me guess, you've been talking to Jake. Maybe even hired someone to dig into my personal life? My blood ran cold. How did she know? Laura smirked, as if reading my mind. You're not as subtle as you think, Nate. But it's cute that you're trying. James finally spoke up, his voice shaky. Look, man, we don't want this to get ugly. It's already ugly, I said, my voice low and dangerous. Laura stood, walking toward me with an air of arrogance that made my skin crawl. Here's the deal, she said. You can keep playing detective, or you can save yourself the trouble and just let it go. Sign the divorce papers when they come, and we'll call it even. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. She was already planning to serve me. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. You think this is over? I said, my voice cold. You have no idea what's coming. Her smirk faltered for the first time. And I realized something in that moment, Laura wasn't invincible. For the first time, I saw a crack in her armor. She wasn't ready for what I had planned next. The air felt heavy as Laura's smug expression twisted into something more guarded. She was sharp, sure, but arrogance blinded her. She underestimated me, something I would use to my full advantage. Is that supposed to scare me, Nate? She said with a forced laugh, her voice teetering on the edge of uncertainty. You're bluffing. I smiled faintly, a flicker of confidence she wasn't expecting. You'll see, I said simply, turning my back on her and James. Walking away felt good, controlled, deliberate. I didn't need to waste more breath arguing. She was right about one thing, I had no intention of bluffing. Upstairs, I pulled out the folder Eddie had compiled and laid it on the bed. Looking at the evidence again was like reopening a fresh wound, but I focused on what mattered, the plan. If Laura wanted war, I'd make sure she regretted it. I texted Jake, I need to speed things up. Eddie ready to move? His reply came almost instantly, we've got everything. Want to hit her now? I stared at the message, my pulse pounding. Jake was right, there was no point in waiting. But before I could respond, there was a sudden knock at the front door. My heart raced. It wasn't like Laura to have visitors this late, especially since James had already been here. I walked to the landing and peered down. Laura had opened the door, her voice hushed but sharp. Why are you here? She demanded. The answer came from a deep voice I didn't recognize. We need to talk. Now. I crept down the stairs, keeping to the shadows. From the corner of the hallway, I saw him, a tall man in a tailored suit. His presence screamed authority, and Laura looked genuinely rattled for the first time in weeks. I told you I'd handle it, she hissed, blocking the doorway as if trying to stop him from coming in. Not good enough, the man snapped. You think I'm going to wait around while you screw this up? You owe me, Laura. Big time. Owe him? What the hell was this? I watched as Laura glanced nervously over her shoulder, her eyes darting toward the staircase. She didn't know I was there, but her fear was palpable. "Keep your voice down," she whispered. "He's upstairs." "I don't care," the man growled, stepping closer. "You think your husband's your biggest problem? You're playing with fire, Laura. And if you don't deliver, I'll make sure you burn." My blood turned to ice. This wasn't just about infidelity anymore. Laura was tangled in something far bigger, and far more dangerous, than I'd imagined. The man shoved a folder into her hands. "You've got 48 hours, he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "After that, I'm done waiting." With that, he turned and walked back to a sleek black car parked at the curb. Laura slammed the door shut and leaned against it, her face pale. I stepped into the hallway, my voice cold and steady. "Who was that?" Laura jumped, spinning to face me. She clutched the folder to her chest like it was a lifeline. "None of your business," she snapped. "Like hell it isn't," I shot back, stepping closer. "You want to blow up our marriage, fine. But now there's some guy threatening you in our house. You'd better start talking." She straightened, her usual arrogance slipping back into place like a mask. "Don't worry about it," she said. "I'll handle it." "Wrong answer," I said, my voice rising. "You think you can drag me into your mess and then keep me in the dark? Tell me what's going on, Laura. Now." Her lips tightened, and for a moment, I thought she might crack. But then she laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "You're so naive, Nate," she said, shaking her head. "You think everything's black and white, don't you? Well, newsflash, it's not. Sometimes, you have to do things you don't like to survive." "Survive what?" I demanded. She didn't answer. Instead, she turned and stormed up the stairs, slamming the bedroom door behind her. The folder's secrets. The house was silent, but my mind was roaring. I stared at the spot where Laura had stood, my gut twisting with unanswered questions. Who was that man? What was in the folder he'd given her? I didn't have to wonder for long. Laura might think she was clever, but she underestimated me again. When I heard the shower running upstairs, I crept to the bedroom door and opened it as quietly as possible. The folder was lying on the bed. My hands trembled as I opened it, flipping through its contents. The first thing that caught my eye was a contract, pages and pages of legal jargon, signed by Laura and some corporate entity I didn't recognize. The words non-disclosure agreement and penalty for breach jumped out at me. Then there were emails, printouts of conversations between Laura and multiple recipients. Most of it was coded language, but one thing was clear, she was involved in something shady. The final page stopped me cold. It was a bank statement, one of Laura's private accounts. The deposits were massive, tens of thousands of dollars at a time, all from a company I didn't recognize. The dates lined up perfectly with her hotel stays, her shopping trips, and every other excuse she'd thrown my way over the last year. This wasn't just cheating. Laura was on someone's payroll. And whatever she was doing for them, it was enough to make grown men in suits show up at our house with threats. I snapped a photo of everything with my phone and tucked the folder back where I found it. As I left the room, my mind raced. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It wasn't even about Laura. It was about survival. And I wasn't going to let her drag me down with her. The morning sunlight poured through the blinds, but it did nothing to warm the chill running through me. After what I'd uncovered in that folder, I barely slept. My mind had been churning all night, piecing together clues, replaying Laura's cryptic words, and figuring out my next move. When I came downstairs, the smell of coffee filled the air, but the atmosphere felt suffocating. Laura was already in the kitchen, dressed impeccably as always, sipping her coffee with the same smug indifference she'd worn like armor for weeks. "Sleep well?" she asked, her tone biting. "Better than you, I'm guessing," I shot back. Her expression faltered for a fraction of a second, but she quickly masked it with an exaggerated smile. "Cute," she said, flipping her hair over her shoulder. "You're getting bolder, Nate. Almost admirable." I ignored her jab and poured myself a cup of coffee, the tension in the room crackling like static electricity. Part of me wanted to lay everything out on the table, shove the truth I'd uncovered in her face, and watch her crumble. But I wasn't ready to play all my cards. Not yet. Laura glanced at her phone, muttering something under her breath. Her impatience was obvious. She had plans, and whatever they were, I needed to know. "Big day?" I asked casually, leaning against the counter. Her eyes narrowed slightly, but she forced a smile. "Just errands. Not that it's any of your concern." I smirked. "Everything about you is my concern, Laura. You're my wife, remember?" Her face hardened, but before she could respond, there was a loud knock at the door. An uninvited guest. I moved to answer it, but Laura was faster, practically sprinting to the door. Her reaction was enough to set off alarm bells in my head. I hung back, staying out of sight, and listened intently. When she opened the door, I heard a familiar voice, the suited man from last night. "We need to talk," he said sharply, his tone leaving no room for argument. Laura's voice was low and tense. "Not here." "Too bad." "I'm done playing nice," he snapped. "You think you can stall me? You're running out of time, sweetheart." I couldn't take it anymore. Stepping into the doorway, I met the man's icy glare head-on. "You again. I think it's time we all had a little chat." The man's eyes darted to me, his face twisting into a scowl. "This doesn't concern you, pal." "The hell it doesn't," I said, stepping closer. "Whatever you've got going on with Laura, it's happening under my roof. So yeah, it concerns me." Laura looked panicked, her usual composure slipping. "Nate, don't." "Save it, Laura," I interrupted, my voice sharp. "I've had enough of your lies." The man smirked, crossing his arms. Looks like the husband finally grew a backbone. Impressive. I ignored his taunt and turned to Laura. "Tell me what's going on." "All of it. Now." She opened her mouth, but the man cut her off. "Don't bother, Nate. She's not going to tell you the truth. But since you're so curious, let me fill in the blanks." Laura's face paled. "Don't." He ignored her, his smirk widening. "Your wife's been working for me. Handling some, let's call them, delicate matters. But lately, she's been slipping up. And when people slip up in my line of work, it gets messy. You understand?" I stared at him, my blood boiling. "What kind of work?" The man's grin turned predatory. "You really want to know? Fine. She's been laundering money. Big sums, too. The kind that makes people notice if it goes missing." My stomach dropped. "Laundering money?" "Bingo," he said, clapping mockingly. "And let me guess, you didn't have a clue. She's good, I'll give her that. But she's not good enough to cover her tracks forever." Laura stepped between us, her voice frantic. "That's enough. This isn't his business." The man's expression darkened. "Oh, it's very much his business now. Because if you don't clean up this mess, sweetheart, he's going to feel the fallout too." I stared at her, my mind racing. "Is this true?" She didn't answer. Her silence was all the confirmation I needed. A calculated risk. The man turned to leave, but before he stepped out, he delivered one final blow. 48 hours, Laura. Get me my money, or things will get uncomfortable. The door slammed shut behind him, leaving a deafening silence in his wake. I turned to Laura, my anger boiling over. How long has this been going on? I demanded. Nate, Answer me. I roared. Her defiance crumbled, and she sank onto the couch, her head in her hands. It started a year ago, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. It was supposed to be one job. Quick, easy money. But it spiraled. A year, I repeated, my voice dripping with disbelief. You've been lying to me for a year. Stealing, cheating, putting our lives at risk, and for what? A quick buck? Her head shot up, her eyes blazing. Don't act so righteous, Nate. You're not perfect. You think you're a saint because you served your country? Newsflash, that doesn't make you better than me. Her words hit like a slap, but they only fueled my resolve. This isn't about me, Laura. This is about the mess you've made. And now, thanks to you, we're both in the crosshairs. She scoffed. Oh, please. Don't play the victim. You don't even know what you're talking about. I stepped closer, my voice low and dangerous. I know enough. And I'm done letting you call the shots. She stared at me, defiant but visibly shaken. For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes, a glimmer of vulnerability she couldn't hide. Good. Let her be scared. Because I wasn't backing down. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about survival, and I was going to make damn sure I came out on top. And Laura? She'd finally learn what it meant to lose. The hours after the man's visit were tense and eerily silent. Laura avoided me like the plague, retreating upstairs while I stayed glued to my phone, coordinating with Jake and Eddie. The storm brewing wasn't just between Laura and me anymore, it was a full-blown hurricane with no signs of slowing. Jake's message buzzed through, "We've got enough to blow this wide open. You sure you want to go through with it?" I stared at the screen, my mind racing. Was I sure? No. But it didn't matter anymore. Laura had crossed so many lines, and now I had to make a move, not just for my pride but for my survival. Do it, I typed back. The trap was set, and Laura didn't even know she was walking straight into it. A sudden departure. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of suitcases being dragged down the stairs. My heart pounded as I shot out of bed and headed for the landing. Laura was in the foyer, dressed in sleek black and fumbling with her keys. Going somewhere? I asked, my voice cutting through the air like a knife. She froze, her back stiffening before she slowly turned to face me. I have a business trip, she said smoothly, avoiding my gaze. I leaned against the banister, crossing my arms. Funny, I don't remember you mentioning anything about that. Her lips curled into a tight smile. I didn't think I needed your permission. No, but you'd think after everything, you'd at least mention it, I said. My eyes drifted to the suitcases. Where exactly are you going, Laura? Chicago, she said quickly, too quickly. I have meetings lined up. I stepped closer, my eyes boring into hers. And I'm supposed to believe that after everything? That this is just a business trip? Her mask slipped for a split second, her expression flickering with guilt before she snapped back into her usual bravado. Believe whatever you want, Nate. I don't have time for this. She grabbed the handle of her suitcase and made for the door, but I wasn't done. Laura, I said, my voice low and steady, if you walk out that door without telling me the truth, you're going to regret it. She paused, her hand hovering over the doorknob. For a moment, I thought she might actually crack, but then she let out a cold laugh. Regret it, she said, spinning around to face me. Please. You're the one who's going to regret this little crusade of yours. You think you're in control, but you have no idea what you're up against. Her words sent a chill down my spine, but I didn't flinch. Try me, I said. Her smirk faltered, and without another word, she opened the door and walked out. A phone call and a bombshell. As soon as the door slammed shut, I grabbed my phone and called Jake. "She's on the move," I said. "Perfect timing," he replied. "We just pulled the trigger on the email drops. The cops should be all over this in no time." I nodded, my grip tightening on the phone. "Good. Keep me posted." I hung up and paced the living room, adrenaline coursing through me. The folder I'd found, the bank statements, the emails, they were all now in the hands of law enforcement. Laura's world was about to implode, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a shred of control returning to my life. But then my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Eddie. "You need to sit down for this," he said, his voice grim. "What is it?" I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. "It's bigger than we thought, Nate," he said. "That guy who came to your house? He's not just some thug. He's a major player in an international laundering operation. And Laura? She's not just some pawn, she's been running one of their pipelines." The room spun around me. "What?" "We dug deeper," Eddie continued. "The money she's been moving isn't just dirty, it's tied to some seriously dangerous people. Cartels, arms dealers, you name it. She's in deep, man. And by association, so are you." My mind raced. The man's threats, Laura's secrecy, the stacks of cash, it all clicked into place like a horrifying puzzle. "What the hell do I do now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Eddie sighed. "You let us handle it. We've got enough evidence to bring the feds in. But you need to be careful. If Laura figures out you're the one who blew the whistle." "She won't," I said firmly, though the words felt hollow. The ticking clock. The hours dragged by, each one heavier than the last. I kept my phone close, waiting for updates from Jake and Eddie, but the silence was deafening. Laura hadn't called or texted, which only made me more uneasy. By evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my jacket and headed out, needing fresh air to clear my head. As I walked through the quiet streets, my thoughts spiraled. Had I done the right thing? Was exposing Laura's crimes worth the risk? Or had I just painted a massive target on my back? Before I could dwell on it further, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Jake. "They've got her." My heart skipped a beat. I stared at the screen, rereading the message over and over. She was caught. It was over. But before I could respond, another message came through, this one from an unknown number. "You think you've won? You're next." I stopped in my tracks, my blood running cold. My eyes scanned the darkened street, every shadow suddenly feeling alive. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I stared at the message on my phone, my chest tight with dread. "You think you've won? You're next." The words glared at me, cutting through the night like a warning shot. Whoever sent it wasn't bluffing. The noose I thought I'd thrown around Laura's neck had somehow managed to catch me too. I looked around the street, my heart pounding. Every parked car, every shadowy alley, felt like it held a threat. My training as a Marine kicked in, the hyper-awareness I hadn't used in years flooding back like muscle memory. I wasn't going to let fear paralyze me. Not now. I tucked my phone into my pocket and headed back to the house, my mind running a mile a minute. The feds had Laura. That meant she was out of the picture for now. But the people she'd been working with? They weren't going to roll over quietly. A shattered home. When I got home, the silence in the house was deafening. It felt like a tomb, a shell of the life Laura and I had built, or pretended to. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the empty chair across from me, the one she used to sit in every morning with her coffee and lies. I thought about everything that had led to this moment. The love I'd once felt for her. The betrayal that gutted me. The lengths I'd gone to expose her. And now, this message, the shadow of her crime still looming over me. My phone buzzed again, pulling me from my thoughts. It was Eddie. "They're flipping her," he said without preamble. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice sharp. "She's cutting a deal," Eddie explained. "She's agreed to testify against the cartel in exchange for leniency. But you're not in the clear, Nate. They know you're involved, at least by proximity. And they're not happy." I rubbed my temples, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. "So what now? Do I just wait for them to come after me?" Eddie's voice was calm but firm. "No. You don't wait. You make the first move. A dangerous gamble." The next few days were a blur of preparation. Eddie and Jake helped me set up a meeting with the feds, laying everything out on the table. The evidence I'd gathered, the threats I'd received, and Laura's betrayal, it all painted a clear picture of how deeply I'd been dragged into her mess. The lead agent, a no-nonsense woman named Carter, listened intently. When I was done, she leaned back in her chair, her sharp eyes studying me. "You've done us a favor by bringing this to light," she said. "But you've also painted a target on your back. The people we're dealing with don't forgive or forget." I nodded, swallowing hard. "So what do I do?" "We're going to protect you," Carter said. "Witness protection is an option. New identity, new life." The idea of disappearing, of leaving everything behind, made my stomach turn. But what was left for me here? My marriage was over. My home was a house of lies. The only thing keeping me rooted was my pride, and pride wouldn't save my life. Laura's last act. The day Laura's plea deal was finalized, I got one last message from her. It was a voicemail, her voice dripping with venom and regret. "I hope you're happy, Nate. You've destroyed everything. I did what I had to do to survive, but you? You stabbed me in the back. Don't think for a second that you're innocent in all this. You're just as dirty as I am." I deleted the message without a second thought. Her words didn't matter anymore. She'd made her choices, and I'd made mine. The escape. 2 weeks later, I stood at the edge of my new life. The government had done its job, scrubbing my identity clean and setting me up in a small, quiet town where no one knew my name. As I unpacked the single duffel bag I was allowed to bring, I found myself reflecting on everything I'd lost, and gained. Laura's betrayal had shattered me, but it had also revealed a strength I didn't know I had. I'd faced the darkness head-on and survived. But survival came at a cost. I'd lost my home, my wife, and the life I'd once known. All I had now was the hope of starting over, of building something real from the ashes. Final reflection. Sitting on the porch of my new home, I watched the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of peace. Laura's betrayal had taught me more than I ever wanted to know about deception, greed, and the fragility of trust. But it had also taught me about resilience, about the power of taking control when everything feels lost. If I had one piece of advice for anyone in a similar situation, it would be this: don't let betrayal define you. Face it. Fight it. And when the dust settles, walk away stronger than you were before. Because no matter how deep the scars, there's always a way forward. And for me, that way was clear. It was time to let go of the past and embrace the unknown. A new chapter. A clean slate. A life free from lies. And this time, I wasn't going to let anyone take it from me.
The first thing I saw when I swung open the heavy oak door of that grim courthouse was my wife, Amanda, sitting with her new boyfriend. If you can call a homewrecker like Brad a boyfriend, laughing. Not just laughing. Mocking me. I was 10 minutes late for our divorce hearing. 10 minutes that, apparently, to Amanda, meant I had surrendered. That I was done. That I had lost everything. She was wearing that smug little black dress she saved for her most wicked days, legs crossed high, head tilted back like some queen who had finally crushed the peasant she married. Brad, with his stupid gelled hair and those cheap sunglasses perched on his head indoors like he was some washed-up celebrity, leaned close to her, whispering something. She cackled loudly enough that the entire hallway turned to look. I felt a slice of something primal shoot through me. Not sadness, not even rage. Electric clarity. They thought it was over. They thought I had lost. They had no idea what was coming. You see, Amanda was never just a cheater. She was an artist of betrayal. Every word from her mouth was a lie dipped in sugar. She used to tell me I was the only man she'd ever wanted, while her phone buzzed under the table from work emergencies at midnight. She used to smile, sweet and warm, while she'd sneak out to book club meetings dressed like she was auditioning for an adult movie. I was blind, or maybe I just refused to see. But sitting there, watching her rub Brad's knee like she was already spending my money in her mind, it hit me. She didn't even feel shame. She didn't even care. The bailiff called out, hearing for divorce case number 5731, Caleb Walker versus Amanda Walker. That's me, Caleb, the man she stabbed 100 times with a smile on her face. I moved through the courtroom like a ghost, my heart thudding so loud I thought it would shake the rafters. Amanda saw me. She smirked. Nice of you to finally show up, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Brad laughed, this low, greasy chuckle that made my skin crawl. I said nothing. I just sat down, laid my folder calmly on the table, and waited. The judge looked annoyed at the delay, but moved things forward. Amanda's lawyer, a slimy piece of work named Curtis, launched into his speech about how Amanda deserved the house, the car, the savings, and a hefty chunk of my future earnings because she had sacrificed her career for our marriage. I clenched my fists under the table so tight my nails dug into my palms. Sacrificed? She spent more time sacrificing herself to Brad in cheap motels than she ever did working on our marriage. Amanda played the part perfectly, the teary-eyed, wronged woman who just wanted a fair outcome. If I didn't know better, I would have believed her myself. Then the judge asked if I had anything to present. I smiled. Finally, I opened the folder. Laid out neatly inside were dozens of color photographs, text message logs, even video footage. Brad and Amanda, together, not just meeting in secret, but plotting. Emails where Amanda detailed how she planned to bleed me dry and then run off with Brad to start a fresh life, funded by my blood, sweat, and tears. I stood up, handed the folder to the judge, and sat back down without saying a word. Amanda's smile wavered. Brad leaned forward, peering like an idiot at the folder, then whispering frantically in her ear. I just watched. I had waited for this. Not revenge. Not payback. Justice. The judge's eyebrows climbed higher with every page he flipped. He stopped halfway through, looked directly at Amanda. Mrs. Walker, he said, voice like ice. Would you care to explain these documents? Amanda froze. For once in her life, she had nothing ready to say. Brad looked like he was about to throw up. And I? For the first time in months, I felt the corners of my mouth twitch. A real smile. A smile that said, you thought you won, but you have no idea what game you were even playing. Amanda shot up from her seat like someone had lit a fire under her. That's fake, she screamed, pointing at the judge as if that would somehow erase the evidence, burning a hole through her lies. The judge didn't flinch. Sit down, Mrs. Walker, he said firmly, or I'll hold you in contempt. Brad grabbed her arm and yanked her down hard enough that her chair squealed across the floor. She shot him a look so venomous it could have melted steel. For a second, it was like watching two rats trapped in the same sinking ship, fighting over who gets the last piece of cheese. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of months of gaslighting, betrayal, and sleepless nights start to lift off my chest. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. Amanda really was that damn vile. The judge spent 10 more minutes flipping through the evidence. Every new page seemed to twist the knife deeper into Amanda's performance. Messages where she called me a walking ATM. Pictures of her sitting on Brad's lap in a hotel bar when she was supposed to be visiting her sick mother. It was all there in black and white. When he was done, he set the folder down with a heavy sigh. In light of this extensive evidence, he said, choosing his words carefully, I'm reversing my earlier inclination toward an even division of assets. Mr. Walker, you will retain full ownership of the home, the vehicle, and financial accounts. Mrs. Walker will receive nothing beyond her personal possessions. Amanda's mouth dropped open so wide I could see the tip of her tongue quivering. Brad's face drained of all color. I didn't even need to look at them. I could feel their panic in the air. It was delicious. The judge banged his gavel. Court is adjourned. I stood up slowly, savoring the moment, tucking my papers into my folder with the same calmness Amanda used to fake every smile. She bolted toward me. "You set me up, you bastard," she hissed, her face inches from mine. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just stared right into those cold, manipulative eyes that I once thought held love. "You set yourself up," I said quietly. Brad grabbed her wrist, pulling her back toward him. "Come on, Amanda," he muttered under his breath. "We'll figure something out." She ripped her hand free and spun on him. "You loser. You said he wouldn't fight back. You promised we'd be rich by now." People were still filing out of the courtroom, watching this circus unfold like it was the best free entertainment they'd seen all month. Amanda didn't care. She screamed it all, airing every filthy plan they had made together for the world to hear. And me? I walked out, my shoulders lighter than they had been in years, listening to the echo of her tantrum bounce down the hallways. Out on the courthouse steps, I finally allowed myself to breathe. Real, deep breaths. No more lies. No more wondering if the person lying next to me at night was secretly plotting my downfall. Freedom had a taste, and it was damn sweet. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my phone. One message blinked on the screen. It was from Amanda, in all caps. "You'll regret this." I chuckled and slid the phone back into my pocket without replying. Let her scream into the void. She was nothing now. I made my way to my truck, no longer something she could claw away from me, and sat behind the wheel, just sitting, feeling everything. The rage, the heartbreak, the relief, the finality. For a moment, the memories tried to surge up. The good times, the smiles, the lazy Sundays spent in bed before I knew what she really was. But they didn't stick. Because every laugh, every kiss, every whispered promise was stained now. Stained with the stench of betrayal. The phone buzzed again. Another message. This time it was Brad. "Let's talk. I think we both got played here." I stared at the screen, feeling a slow, dangerous smile curl up my face. Brad thought we were on the same side now. Like two beaten dogs licking their wounds together. He didn't realize, he never would, that he was just as disposable to Amanda as I had been. She would turn on him the second someone richer, dumber, or easier came along. I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat and started the engine. I wasn't looking back. Not for Amanda, not for Brad, not for anyone. But I knew, deep down, the story wasn't over yet. Because women like Amanda, they don't lose quietly. They don't vanish into the night. They come back, clawing, scratching, trying to sink their dirty fingers into whatever piece of you they think they can still control. And I was ready. 2 days later, the first letter showed up. No text, no calls this time. Just an official-looking envelope dropped into my mailbox like a ticking time bomb. I tore it open standing right there in the driveway, heart already hammering against my ribs. Inside was a lawsuit. Amanda was accusing me of emotional distress, abuse, and intentional sabotage of her future earnings. It was a joke. A sick, twisted joke. But the papers were real. Stamped. Signed. Filed. I laughed out loud, the sound ripping out of my throat sharp and ugly. Neighbors walking their dogs turned to stare. Let them stare. Let the whole damn world see what happens when a liar runs out of ways to win. I walked back into the house, my house, and dropped the papers onto the kitchen table. The kitchen still smelled faintly of her perfume, like a ghost refusing to leave. I sat there for a long time, staring at nothing, fists pressed into my temples so hard it felt like my skull might crack. This wasn't about love. It was never about love. It was about winning. Control. Amanda couldn't stand losing. She'd rather drag us both through hell than accept that she didn't get her way. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Brad. "Dude, she's out of control. She trashed my apartment. Punched me in front of my boss. She's nuts, man." I almost dropped the phone laughing. It was almost too perfect. Brad, the great savior, now just another piece of wreckage in Amanda's personal demolition derby. I didn't reply. What was there to say? He got exactly what he signed up for. Later that night, just when I thought it was safe to breathe, the doorbell rang. I checked the peephole. Amanda. Mascara smeared. Hair wild. A bottle of vodka swinging lazily from her hand. I almost didn't open it. Almost. But some stupid, stubborn part of me wanted to see her face. Wanted to look her dead in the eyes and let her see how little she mattered now. I cracked the door open just enough to talk. What do you want? She stumbled forward, almost falling against the frame. You ruined everything, she slurred, jabbing a finger at me like it was a weapon. I stayed silent. She pushed harder, trying to wedge her way in, but I blocked her with my body. You think you're better than me? She hissed, eyes glassy, lips curling into a snarl. You're nothing. You were always nothing. You just had a paycheck. There it was. The real Amanda. Not the sweet, smiling liar. The monster underneath. I could smell the vodka on her breath. Could see the desperate twitch in her hands. You need to leave, I said quietly. She laughed, sharp and vicious. You can't make me leave. You think the court's gonna save you now. I said nothing. Just stepped back and closed the door slowly, firmly, locking it with a click that sounded like a final nail in a coffin. I stood there for a moment, forehead against the wood, listening. She kicked the door once, twice, and then the sounds of her stumbling down the front steps. I waited until her car engine roared to life and peeled out of the driveway like a bat out of hell. Then I picked up my phone and called the police. Filed a report. Documented everything. I wasn't playing her game. Not anymore. The next morning, a brick crashed through the living room window. Shards of glass exploded across the floor, embedding into the couch, the carpet, the walls. I dropped to the floor instinctively, adrenaline flooding my veins. Outside, the tail end of a black SUV disappeared down the street. No proof. No witnesses. Just the sick, sinking knowledge that this was far from over. I spent the next few hours boarding up the window, the hammer blows rhythmic and angry, sweat pouring down my back. Every thud felt like a heartbeat, like a war drum. I wasn't afraid. I was ready. Amanda had declared war. Fine. She was going to find out exactly what it felt like to pick a fight with someone who had already lost everything worth losing. 3 nights later, just past midnight, I woke up to the sound of sirens outside my house. Flashing blue and red lights painted the walls, my heart slamming against my ribs so hard it hurt. I staggered to the window and pulled the curtain aside. 2 police cars. A third unmarked vehicle behind them. Officers were fanning out across my lawn with flashlights. Before I could even think, the pounding came at the front door. I yanked on a hoodie, hard in my throat, and answered. One of the officers, tall and stone-faced, held up a badge. Caleb Walker? Yeah, I said, voice rough. We have a warrant to search your property. I blinked at him, stunned. What the hell for? Anonymous tip, he said flatly. Domestic violence. Assault. Threats. It hit me like a punch to the gut. Amanda. Of course. She couldn't beat me in court, so she was trying to bury me any other way she could. If she couldn't have my life, she'd settle for burning it to the ground. They pushed past me without waiting for permission, storming through the house like they expected to find bodies buried under the floorboards. I followed helplessly, fists clenched at my sides, fury boiling inside me so hot I thought I'd explode. One officer opened every drawer. Another peeled back couch cushions. They rifled through my closets, my garage, even the shed out back. One of them, a younger guy who looked about my age, caught my eye. There was something almost apologetic in his face. He knew. They all knew. This wasn't real justice. It was a circus act. After 2 hours of tearing my life apart, they found exactly nothing. Because there was nothing to find. The lead officer came back to the front door where I stood, arms crossed, jaw tight enough to crack teeth. You're clear, he said gruffly. But if she files anything else, we'll have to follow up. I didn't respond. Didn't trust myself to speak without throwing something. They left as suddenly as they came, leaving my house looking like a crime scene. I dropped onto the bottom step of the staircase, head in my hands, breathing like I'd just run a marathon. I could have ignored the first lawsuit. Could have brushed off the brick. But this was different. Amanda was trying to ruin me, and she was willing to lie, cheat, and destroy everything in the process. I stayed up the rest of the night, sitting in the dark, phone in my hand, staring at her name in my contacts list. One call, one message. I could unleash hell on her if I wanted. I had more dirt than she even knew I had. I could drag her name through court, the press, through every social circle she ever wanted to be part of. But part of me hesitated. Not because I still loved her. No, that had died the second she wrapped herself around Brad like a damn trophy. It was because I realized something deeper. Revenge wouldn't heal me. Not really. But survival would. Freedom would. And Amanda? Amanda was her own worst punishment. She was a grenade without a pin now, blowing up everything she touched. I didn't have to lift a finger. She would destroy herself far better than I ever could. As if the universe wanted to prove me right. The next morning, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Almost. But something made me swipe the screen. It was Brad. His voice cracked with panic. "Caleb, listen, man, you gotta watch yourself," he blurted out. "Amanda's lost it. She's telling people you abused her. She's showing up drunk at my work. She got arrested last night for crashing her car into a tree. Man, she's saying crazy stuff." I stayed silent, letting him spill his guts. Brad was terrified. I could hear it. "Finally," I said, "not my problem anymore." He stuttered something about how she was threatening to drag both of us down. How she said if she was going down, she'd take everyone with her. I almost laughed. Brad sounded like a drowning man screaming for a life raft after he helped poke holes in the boat. I hung up without another word. Then I blocked his number, too. No more Amanda. No more Brad. No more bleeding out for people who would watch me die and still ask for more. I grabbed my keys, got into my truck, and drove out of town. No destination. No plan. Just the open road stretching out in front of me like a second chance. The sun was coming up, casting everything in gold. For the first time in a long, long time, I let the hope rise inside me without crushing it down. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was winning. And Amanda? Amanda hadn't even begun to feel the true loneliness she had bought for herself. But she would. Oh, she would. A week passed. A week where I didn't hear a word from Amanda. Didn't see her car prowling past my street. Didn't find smashed windows or receive screaming voicemails at 3 in the morning. Almost peaceful. Almost. Until one afternoon when I came home and found a white envelope taped to my front door. No stamp. No address. Just my name written in angry, slashing letters across the front. My stomach turned before I even opened it. Inside were photographs. Not ones I had seen before. New ones. Amanda had hired some sleazebag to follow me around, snapping pictures of me at the gym, buying groceries, walking into a bar with some old friends. Nothing dirty. Nothing illegal. But each photo had captions scrawled underneath in Amanda's handwriting. Proof he's an alcoholic. Proof he's violent. Proof he's mentally unstable. It was pathetic. Desperate. But it still sent a cold chill crawling up my spine. She wasn't trying to win anymore. She was trying to ruin me from the inside out. I dropped the photos onto the counter and stood there for a long moment, gripping the edge so hard my knuckles turned white. I had options. I could take this straight to the police. File another harassment complaint. Maybe get a restraining order. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't matter. Amanda was unraveling, faster and faster, and dragging me into her spiral was the only way she knew how to feel alive. I called my lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Teresa who had seen every ugly trick in the book. She was silent as I explained everything, then finally said, "We hit her back where it hurts. Full harassment charges. Defamation lawsuit. You ready for that?" I thought about it. Really thought. About the endless court dates. The smears on my name. The chance she'd drag this out for years just to keep herself in my life. "No," I said finally. "I'm not giving her that power." Teresa paused. "You sure?" "Positive. I wanted my life back. Not a front row seat to Amanda's self-destruction." Teresa respected that. She gave me some advice, document everything, stay clean, stay distant, and hung up. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept pacing the house, feeling like every shadow hit Amanda, like every creak in the floorboards was her breath on my neck. Around 3 a.m., I gave up trying to sleep and sat out on the porch, wrapped in a hoodie, watching the stars. And that's when I heard it. A low scraping sound from the side of the house. I froze, heart slamming against my ribs, every muscle going rigid. Another scrape. Then a soft thud. I moved slowly, grabbing the baseball bat I kept by the front door, my fingers tightening around the handle. I stepped off the porch, into the dark, cold grass. Another thud. Around the side of the house, crouched by the basement window, was Amanda. She looked awful. Hair tangled, face hollow, wearing an oversized hoodie I didn't recognize and jeans that hung off her like dead weight. She was trying to break in, like a junkie desperate for a hit. "Amanda," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "Get the hell off my property." She jerked around, wild-eyed, scrambling to her feet. "You owe me," she screamed, voice cracked and broken. "You ruined my life." "No," I said, stepping closer, bat loose in my hands but ready. "You ruined it all by yourself." She lunged toward me suddenly, nails flashing in the dim light. I didn't swing, didn't even flinch. I just stepped aside and let her trip over her own feet, sprawling into the dirt. Before she could scramble up again, red and blue lights flared at the end of the street. My neighbors had called the cops. This time, Amanda didn't fight. She sat there in the grass, sobbing, broken, as two officers cuffed her and read her rights. I stood there, arms crossed, watching it happen, feeling nothing. No satisfaction, no triumph. Just a dull, deep ache where something used to live. Amanda didn't even look at me as they hauled her away. Maybe she finally understood that there was nothing left to fight for. Not me, not my life, not her lies. Nothing, just ashes. And she had set the whole fire herself. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table, staring blankly at a mug of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. Sleep had been useless. Even after watching Amanda get cuffed and driven off into the night, there was no peace in me. There was only a hollow kind of exhaustion. The world outside my window looked almost normal. Kids riding bikes, sprinklers hissing in front yards, dogs barking somewhere down the street. Normal life going on. But inside me, everything still felt wrecked. Then the doorbell rang. I almost didn't answer it. My body flinched at the sound like a kicked dog expecting another boot. But something made me get up. Something told me this wasn't over. At the door stood a woman in a cheap gray suit, clipboard in hand, an uncomfortable expression on her face. "Mr. Walker?" she asked. "Yeah," I said carefully. "I'm from Child Protective Services. We received an anonymous tip about potential child endangerment at this residence." I stared at her, stunned into silence. "I don't have any kids," I finally said. The woman shifted uncomfortably, checking her clipboard. "No minors living here?" "No," I said, voice getting sharper. "Never have." She nodded, scribbling something down. "Well, we'll have to document the visit, but if there are no children, this will be closed quickly. Sorry to bother you." I didn't say anything. I just closed the door and leaned my forehead against it, feeling the weight of what had just happened. Amanda, again, her final nuclear option, accused me of something so vile, so damaging, that even the accusation alone could ruin my life forever. She didn't even care that it made no sense. She just wanted blood. I laughed bitterly under my breath. A dry, broken sound. It was over. There was no doubt now. Amanda would burn everything, herself included, just to watch me suffer a little longer. I called Teresa and told her what happened. She cursed under her breath and promised to handle it legally. But I knew the truth. There wasn't a legal document on earth that could stop a person who had decided they didn't care about consequences. Amanda was like a ghost now, haunting every part of my life she could still touch. That night, I packed a duffel bag. Just the essentials: clothes, cash, documents. I called an old buddy from college, Eric, who lived 2 states over. "You serious?" he asked when I told him I needed a place to crash for a while. "Dead serious," I said. He didn't ask questions, just said, "Get your ass over here." By midnight, I was driving out of the city, the glow of the streetlights fading in my rearview mirror, Amanda's memory shrinking smaller and smaller behind me. I didn't know if she would follow. Didn't know if she'd even care that I was gone. But for once, it didn't matter. The road stretched ahead of me like a blank canvas. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt like I could breathe. Somewhere around the state line, my phone buzzed. One last message from Amanda. "You'll never be happy. You hear me? Never." I stared at it for a long moment. Not angry, not hurt, just sad. Not for me, for her. Because even now, even after everything, Amanda couldn't understand that happiness wasn't something you steal from someone else. It's something you build inside yourself. And she had burned all her blueprints long ago. I deleted the message without replying, blocked the number, and kept driving, mile after mile, hour after hour, until the city was nothing but a bad dream in the distance. Ahead of me was nothing but possibilities. Behind me was a woman who had tried to destroy everything good in her life, and failed. And inside me, for the first time in forever, was a quiet place where hope could finally start to grow again. It took me almost 6 hours to reach Eric's place. A small town where nobody knew my name. where Amanda's poison hadn't seeped into every crack of my life. When I pulled into his driveway, he was already outside, 2 beers in hand, wearing that same easy grin he always had back in college. He didn't say much, just clapped me on the shoulder and handed me a beer. We sat there on his porch in silence for a long time, watching the sun dip behind the hills, feeling the cool air settle in. For the first time in what felt like forever, the silence wasn't heavy. It wasn't something I had to be afraid of. It just was. Later that night, lying on his battered couch, I finally let myself think about everything that had happened. The lies, the betrayals, the way Amanda had mocked me in court, laughing with Brad like I was some pathetic fool about to lose everything, not knowing that I'd been the one holding the real cards all along. I remembered how they thought the hearing was the end of me, how they laughed when I was late, convinced I had given up, that I was broken. And I remembered the moment their faces fell when they realized I hadn't lost. I had won, not because I crushed them, not because I humiliated them, but because I walked away, because they couldn't touch me anymore. Amanda thought life was about winning and losing, about stepping on people before they could step on you. But she never understood that real power isn't in hurting others. It's in surviving them. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Teresa. Case closed. Charges dropped. She's facing her own legal issues now. You're free. I stared at the words for a long time, feeling them sink into my bones. Free. It didn't feel the way I thought it would. There wasn't some giant explosion of happiness. No dramatic fist pumping in the air. Just a slow, steady peace filling the spaces Amanda had hollowed out inside me. I spent the next few weeks helping Eric with some construction projects he had going. Built things with my hands. Things that didn't lie, didn't betray. The kind of honest work that clears your head and stitches your soul back together a little bit at a time. Sometimes, late at night, when I was too tired to sleep, I'd think about Amanda. Wonder where she was. If she was still tearing through people's lives like a wrecking ball. But mostly, I didn't care. She wasn't my problem anymore. One evening, sitting by the fire pit out back, Eric asked me, "You think you'll ever go back?" I poked the fire with a stick, watching the embers swirl up into the night sky. Back to what? I said. He nodded like he understood. Because he did. There was no going back. Only forward. If there's one thing I learned from Amanda, and it cost me more than I ever thought I could pay, it's this. Trust your gut. If something feels wrong, it is. No amount of love or hope or loyalty will change a person who doesn't want to be good. And never, ever let someone convince you that you're crazy for seeing the truth. The world is full of Amandas. Smiling, laughing, promising you the world with one hand while setting fire to it behind your back with the other. But the world is also full of good people. Real people. You just have to walk through hell sometimes to find them. That's what survival looks like. Not standing tall, but getting up. Again and again. Even when you don't want to. Even when you think you can't. Especially then. One night, long after the fire burned low, I stood up, stretched, and looked out into the dark fields stretching away from Eric's place. The stars overhead were bright. So bright it hurt to look at them. But I didn't look away. Not anymore. I was done looking away. Done surviving other people's storms. It was time to build something better. Something real. And this time, no one was going to tear it down but me.